Right. So, really quickly, I'm just going to, me and Wade will just talk very briefly about the EIR program and talk a little bit about MEIA. And then we have two current EIRs with us, Dean and Joel, and they can talk about their experiences, both the good and bad. And then we'll have about 10 minutes of instructions or questions. And, because we don't like to waste time here, we'll hopefully try to limit this to 45 minutes. Wade, did you want to talk about sort of MEIA and our parent?
Sure. So Mike and I hate the titles and stuff like that. We're like the business partners at MEIA, the Maryland Energy Innovation Center, and we are a program inside of the Maryland Clean Energy Center. A lot of changes going on at the Clean Energy Center. They are slowly but surely, because through legislative action, becoming more and more the green bank of Maryland. The programs are changing almost every day. We over the next 3 years will be getting at MCEC over $15 million that can be used for different programs. But at MCEC, and they are a functionality of the state, just like then the same as the university system. But we are created in state statutes, and we work on everything from home renovations for just on insulation and those kinds of things, to working for procurement for the different universities, the different hospitals, and compounds here in the labs in the state of Maryland. And then inside of it, we have the Maryland Energy Innovation Accelerator, and it's kind of the economic development side of MCEC. And Mike and I's job is to find inventors inside the university system here in the state of Maryland, both private and public schools, and at the 42 plus federal and state labs here in the state of Maryland. And the simplest thing, what makes MEIA different is what Mike's going to talk about today, is the energy executives in residence. And when we do the interviews, and I think I recognize most of the names. I think I've talked with many of you, just trying to find places to place you. But at the end of the day, we are hoping to have people who at least have the thought in mind of joining these inventors in creating a company and getting the technology from the lab, from the university, out into into the economic world, and helping Maryland achieve our climate goals. And that's really our hope. And so we're just the economic development engine inside of MCEC. And with that, I'll be quiet, and Mike, it's all yours.
All right. So just really quickly, you might ask why Maryland, why MEIA? I mean, I think a part of that is just our location. We are very connected to a lot of the federal funding that is out there. So, we're, for example, first in federal obligations and R&D on a per capita basis in the country. We're fifth in R&D expenditures. We're on both density. We're 10th. The clean tech ecosystem of the DC area, which we're included, is considered 10th by Startup Genome. So, and we're number one in ARPA-E as far as research awards. So there's a lot of sort of, non-dilutive capital going into our university centers and other things that Wade was describing, that just provides a lot of opportunity to sort of roll this out into a commercialized basis. Nigar wants some examples. Nigar, we'll have a couple of examples when Dean and Joel talk, because they'll talk about the companies they're supporting. All right. So MEIA is basically three programs. We have three programs in MEIA, which we leverage experienced executives and experts like you. We have our free accelerator program, which runs every summer. This is more of a time-based cohort, where we're getting basically idea stage or concepts, and we're working with people who have those ideas and really trying to test those ideas to the market, to the technology, and to whether they themselves want to sort of move that into more of a startup journey. So that happens every summer. And then we have our main programs, which are the Launchpad and the Accelerator. They operate pretty similar. The difference is the Launchpad basically takes, research that has been sort of scientifically been proven in the labs and wants to basically commercialize that through a venture. And so we, basically hire on potential EIRs to play a role, oftentimes an executive role. And it's a time where the executive and the inventor scientist can work together and see if they want to, if there's hope to be able to roll this out into an actual, not just a project, but an actual enterprise that could be sort of formed around it. And then our accelerator is probably more for people, entrepreneurs out of their garages. And we have a couple of those that already have sort of the CEO, but want to sort of supplement their team or bring in expertise. And so we have budgets for that. The funding you see in the bottom is basically the funding that we have to mobilize people for each company that we have, experts, EEIRs, and other types of funding to help these inventions become companies or these companies to start growing. So you might want to ask, what are the qualifications of an EEIR? I mean, I think first is most of them have a desire to make some changes around what's going on with global climate and global warming. A lot of even our EIRs have been executives, but want more of a startup sort of. They didn't want to test the startup life, with joining one of our teams. And most of the stuff again is probably pretty novel. I'm always going to Google trying to figure out what we're doing because there's so much on chemistry, there's so much on material science, and I'm just like, wow. I mean, we're getting some really, really interesting discoveries. So it's really about cutting edge stuff, I would say, also within the teams that we have. Just when I got here, I ran a sort of look of who is our EEIRs, what's sort of in their databases, what are their technical skills, what are sort of their functional level skills, and we really cover a large basis of different sort of technical skills because climate tech itself is pretty broad. That said, I would say batteries is probably our biggest need typically, and that's oftentimes because at the University of Maryland, they're probably one of the best centers around R&D around battery technology, but we hit a broad spectrum of different types of expertise, and same with the functional areas. We have people who've been CEOs, executives. A lot of our inventors need sort of people on the marketing business development side, a lot on product development side, and Joel will talk about that because that's sort of his background. So we have it's really difficult for us to like nail down and say this is what an EEIR looks like. They're very diverse and variety of experiences that we have been leveraging. The process is not as complicated as this diagram shows. I mean, many of you have already submitted an expression of interest to be an EIR. At the same time, we have a pipeline of inventors and startups coming in. And and typically as Wade has talked to many of you, we try to do, a simple filter just to make sure that we understand your expertise, desires, potential of jumping into a company and even playing a potential role. But we don't try to make hard decisions about who is going to be an executive in one of the teams. We try to just be more of a matchmaker to connect the executives with the startups and the inventors who are looking for teams. And it's really up to the project leader because this is as much as an expertise, and often just even connecting and finding that personal connection with the person is often important. So we'll have some initial conversations, and if the team leader or project leader or startup founder is interested, that's when we sort of we have an agreement that we have signed with you, which is sort of like a consulting sort of agreement, you know, an independent consulting agreement with some light deliverables. Um, and then we sort of try to run meetings about every other week. That should say by every other week meetings. The meetings can kind of vary very much from the initial meeting. Obviously, there's sort of an understanding of where the critical needs are and sort of where the long-term desire is. But from there, the meetings can go in a lot of different places. I mean, really understanding a customer, targeting, you know, what is your first use cases? I think those are typically some of the first conversations that happen. But you know, it could go into sort of IP protection. It can go into raising money, different grant opportunities out there from the federal government. I mean, it goes into a lot of different sort of conversations. We try to hold this between like a 4 to 6 month engagement, and basically it's really a trial out period between the people recruit and the startups to see if this will work out. At the end of the day, we have two, I would say, light deliverables, and this is based on the grants that were funded on. I'm sure many of you know the business model canvas. So, you know, we asked the EIR to help the teams fill out a business model canvas and also a pitch deck, which they will present in a finale. And we'll actually have our finale on June 22nd for this current cohort. I should say we have a rolling cohort. So there's no end or start date. It's just we're constantly bringing teams in. We're constantly bringing in EEIRs in. The only thing is our pre-accelerator is sort of a fixed date from that perspective. We do reimburse. This isn't like a pro bono mentoring engagement. This is, you know, a compensated sort of almost consulting engagement, although we want this to be a longer term relationship than what our budgets allow us for. I mean, I understand $50 an hour is not typically what, you know, a lot of people in the private sector make, but it's sort of our government, you know, rate that we have. You know, we have a limited budget of 5,000. And if you go back to that one slide where I said we had 15 or 10,000, we traditionally try to get 2 EEIRs on each team. Oftentimes we'll recruit them at different times. Typically we'll try to bring in that executive, more strategic role at first, and then probably hone in on a more specific role to fill in for the team. We have cost reimbursements that we can do. We also try to promote and even that the EIRs come and visit the company. A lot of our EIRs are not in Maryland, and we even have had EIRs taking executive roles and still, you know, have their place in other parts of the country. And so for that reason, we also have some funding that we can, you know, use for travel to meet and engage with everyone. But like I said, this isn't obviously, you know, this isn't like McKinsey rates or BCG, but you know, this is to basically show that, you know, this isn't a mentoring engagement. It's not a coaching engagement. This is about really rolling up the sleeves and having our EEIRs really, you know, help, you know, often with customer discovery, calling potential clients, you know, really being part of the team rather than just sort of being an advisor. Before I sort of go in, and I'm almost on time. Before I go into Joel and Dean, Wade, did you want to add anything that I might have missed?
No, I think there was, well, just one, I say it just a little bit simpler. The way you should look at it, well, I guess the companies hire the EEIRs. MEIA pays the EEIRs. So this is really a paid tryout, and that's what we're really hoping. That's then we form executive teams that can, you know, again, help us meet our climate goals. But that's the only thing I would add is that the company hires, we're the ones who pay. But yeah, that was great.
Great. So I'll hand this off to Joel and Dean, who, you know, I wanted to create sort of this little panel of you know, 2 current active EIRs. from that perspective, and you'll see they're very different. Even I had to show your pictures, guys, just to show the uniqueness of your personalities. But Dean, I'll let you go first, and maybe you could just do a quick introduction on your experiences.
Yeah,
To start off with.
absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dean Hill, and as was alluded to in the previous slide, my background is in sustainability, marketing, and product manufacturing. So when I have 11 years experience as a director of sustainability for a product manufacturer called Green Screen. And when I was with the company called Green Screen, we were very much into paying universities for research. So during that time, I met a gentleman by the name of David Tilley, who's an environmental scientist at the professor at the University of Maryland. And he conducted a 3-year research project for us regarding the building envelope and how plant material can help shade the building envelope and actually affect indoor ambient air temperature. So I've known Dave for probably about 13 years or so. So I had a little bit of background. We've established a much better working relationship. We had a good relationship to begin with. And I actually helped Dave at Living Canopies launch their first initial product called the Living Umbrella down here in Florida. So Dave and I are familiar with each other. We've worked together in the past. And he asked me to come on and help him with his Living Canopies and a new product introduction called Cool Green Shelters. So basically what I've been tasked with doing is going through the accelerator program, is completing the business model canvas and completing the pitch deck, or helping Dave complete the pitch deck. The business canvas model was pretty much all of mine. So I completed that for him, but David and I worked side by side in which to put the pitch deck together, which is basically where we are right now. Mike and Wade have been helping us as we go into our seed round, which we're launching our seed round probably here at the beginning of April. I just completed a 15-page, I can't even remember what it is. It's the go-to-market strategy for Living Canopies. So we're really in a position where we've gotten to all of those milestones, and we're ready to get into the seed round and see if we can finance and actually scale this product up. So it's good to be here. I'd love to hear any questions that anybody might have. And thank you for having me.
And Joel, maybe you want to go next, just a quick introduction and maybe a little bit about what you're doing.
Awesome. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Joel Polanco. I am a product leader at Intel, and I have 18 years experience in semiconductor manufacturing. So I started off in semiconductor manufacturing, but I've also worked over in sales, in marketing, and now in product for the last 8 years. And I'm currently a product leader in industry organization at Intel. So we are very software focused, actually. A lot of folks don't know that we actually have a lot of software that we produce for our hardware, their chips. I basically was recruited by MEIA because of my background. They were looking for someone with process engineering experience in semiconductor and a product management background. And I basically checked those 2 boxes, and I've been working with ion devices, Keith Gregorchich, who Keith and his team have a very unique technology that they've been developing for many years, which is effectively solid state lithium ion batteries. And the very unique part of the batteries is that they are being produced using semiconductor manufacturing processes which varies very differently than your typical lithium ion batteries. I was most excited by this opportunity, and glad I'm here today speaking to all of you.
Maybe Joel, you can continue just talking about what are you, with what are you doing on sort of a monthly or bi-weekly basis to help the team and the technology? Sort of maybe you can walk us through that process too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So where Dean kind of highlights that they're putting together their go-to-market strategy, we are not there yet. So what we've been focusing on is the customer discovery aspects, really heavily involved there, and that's where a lot of my background comes in. A lot of Keith and the founding team's effort is built around the technology itself. So things coming out of the university lab, devices coming out of the university lab, and then figuring out how are we going to commercialize this solid state lithium technology. They've asked me to come in and help them meet with customers. So a lot of my activity is reaching out to folks in my network, identifying key people that we would want to go speak with out in various parts of the industry or the value chain that we've mapped. Mapping that value chain, doing the business model canvas, formulating our hypotheses, and then going out and testing those through customer discovery interviews. So a big part of what I focused on initially was developing our research plan for who we would want to go speak with, what were the hypotheses that we wanted to go test, and then ultimately moving us down the path of identifying whether or not we'll have product market fit with this technology and its eventual commercialization.
Hey, Joel, I just like to piggyback on that a little bit, because I think you make an important distinction that there are some products that are in different phases of where they are in the process. So, and before having this opportunity and this experience to do this, everything I knew about entrepreneurship was from Shark Tank. But what you find in going through this process is that there are distinct things that you need to meet in order to continue through the process. So the customer discovery is critical to the business model canvas. And once you get through that business model canvas, then you can start to concentrate on your pitch deck. And then once you get through the pitch deck, then you can start to concentrate on your go-to-market strategy. You can start to concentrate on your positioning statement. You can start to concentrate on identifying, VC and private equity. So I think that's a really good distinction to make, is that there are certain pathways that you help that company manage to be able to get to the end result.
Absolutely. Yeah, like one example, Dean, is where as we're going through customer discovery and asking questions, we would reach out to different folks in industries that we identified as potential top markets that we would go after. And in those interviews, we would identify, hey, this market, huge market, but the problem here is all the regulatory concerns you're going to have. And then, in turn, we'd speak with a different market, and we actually spoke up with a startup founder who just exited, and he was in the wearables market. He was explaining, yes, we were looking at medical, but we stuck with wearables for XYZ reasons. And so you get this sort of help and guidance as you go through this process. And we landed on a couple of go-to-market models that we would actually want to go test as a function of these conversations. So it's very, very much a art and a science, and you try to do your best to kind of navigate through that and then set up these conversations for the founders who may not have this experience, where I have this experience through my work starting up products within a corporation. Now I love this opportunity that I'm actually helping try to build this company and build the product line around it at the same time.
And that's a great point. One of the things that really gets me excited and has really kept me heavily invested in this process is, you get invested and you start to look at, okay, well, we can figure out where the markets are, but then you start to expand upon those markets. For example, the product that we're launching is basically geared and aimed to disrupt the bus shelter model. So we've devised a product that has green roof technology, it has solar power, it has environmental data gathering capabilities, it has rainwater harvesting, it has integrated irrigation, it has a number of these different technological advances. So what we started to think about is, yeah, the municipal bus shelter market is very big, but it's also very competitive. So we started to think about, all right, well, what are the other technology forward companies out there or industries out there that might be more assimilated to technology and how to implement and utilize technology? So we started to look at, municipal market is huge. It's going to be big. We started to look at autonomous vehicle service providers. So basically what's happening now is autonomous vehicles have moved into their generation 4 vehicles, where now they can go up to 50 miles an hour and they can hold 22 people on a closed loop system. So immediately right there, that was a big market segment for us that we identified. And also by looking at that market segment, they're also partnered with end owners and developers, because what they're doing is developers are developing large areas and they're providing their own autonomous vehicle transportation within those developments. So that's another market that we determined would be good for us to go after, the end owners and the developers. And then we started to look at, my background has been calling on and building a network in the AEC community. So that's architecture, engineering, construction, landscape architecture, you name it. And that's actually going to be a really good market for us as well, because all of those transportation planning architecture firms or, urban design firms are looking for new products that fit into an innovative environment that actually matches the brand of all of those markets moving forward. So it's market discovery and customer discovery is very important. So we basically have identified those markets, but last week we really, in order to do our go-to-market strategy, we really had to focus in and declare which one market was critical for us, and that's going to be the municipal market. But what we did is we segmented that market, and the niche market of smart cities, which a smart city is actually a technology forward city. That's going to be our niche market in which to go after our first introduction.
That's great, Dean. Maybe you can just tell us, Dean, what you've liked and enjoyed about being at EEIR, and what you would tell me in way to improve on, or what's been a little bit more frustrating.
Well, actually, it hasn't been frustrating for me at all with MEIA. I've had some frustrations with some other contracts, but one of the best things that I like about MEIA is they're very hands-on. And actually, I started when Ben Margolis and Brian Toll were here before Mike and Wade came on board. We had some really good meetings in the interim. The thing that I like about MEIA is that you can invoice them monthly, which is a pretty big consideration when you're doing part-time contracting or part-time consulting. So that's one of the things that I really like about MEIA. One of the frustrations that I had prior to a couple of weeks ago was that MEIA could only take you to a certain point. So you go through the accelerator, you get to your seed round, or you get to your Series A, and that's kind of where MEIA doesn't really have the necessary resources in which to continue. So Mike and Wade have put together a proposal that they went to the Maryland legislature 2 weeks ago to say, hey, we need some funding so that we can finance, some of these seed companies and some of these pre-seed companies so that they're able to continue on this journey. And I think that's extremely critical.
Yeah, and we'll see the outcome of that hopefully soon. No decision yet. Joel, yourself, what has been great? What feedback do you have for us?
Yeah, I think to echo Dean, things have been amazing. I've made a lot of new connections. So a big part of the opportunity here was making new connections with folks in academia and in new industries that are outside of my normal bubble, so to speak. And the coaching along the way, we've gotten great coaching, different ideas that we present. I feel like the feedback we get is on point. We get back information that's straight information, straight feedback that isn't fluff, and so we're able to take that and then move in new directions and pivot, and make sure that we're not wasting a lot of time. To echo Dean as well, it's like, it's been a very seamless process in terms of the background, the administration, and everything. So we haven't had any issues with invoicing or anything like that. So we can just focus on the real work where, we want to be invested in the company and its success. And so we're not wasting time with any of the administrative pieces. So, I think this has been a great opportunity for me, and I definitely am a recommender of the program if folks are interested.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Joel. And I should mention that we actually did a blog post on this. The interesting thing about Joel and his connection with Intel, working at Intel, is when Andy Grove at one point thought Intel should sort of pivot into climate tech and work in batteries, and it never happened. But it Joel's, I guess, the connection between his vision and what we're doing now.
Yeah. Like, so for those who don't know, Andy Grove was a former CEO of Intel back in the 80s and the 90s. And he is, arguably one of the best CEOs ever. And after he retired, he still remained as part of the company, and he was trying to get the board actually to buy into this idea that batteries are going to be huge. We should be looking at the next vision of our business, the next version of our business, and manufacturing of batteries particularly for transportation was something he was trying to convince them to invest in. Unfortunately, they didn't do that, obviously, but I find it ironic here that today, 18 years later, I was contacted by a battery startup who is using semiconductor, chip manufacturing technology to build these batteries. And so I tip my hat to Uncle Andy on that concept, because I think he was way ahead of his time.
I appreciate it. So I'm just going to open it up to questions to me or Wade or Gene and Joel, Dean or Joel, if there's any questions anybody would like to ask. Go ahead and just pop on. I'm not a big. I don't like the chat function questions. We like to hear your voices. Go ahead,
so
Tim.
I get unmuted, so I'll just go ahead. So I'd like to hear kind of what the rhythm of your working with these teams is. Do you have weekly calls with them? Is it ebb and flow? How do you decide what to do? Do you look at things like ICOR, SBIRs? What's kind of I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I guess I'll kick off, Dean, if you don't mind. Yeah, I think for me, we initially set up a cadence of bi-weekly where myself, founders, and then Mike and Wade and Brian would meet. And then between those were check-ins to see on progress. So, the expectation is between those bi-weekly meetings that you have your kind of your work stream that you're going after. For us, initially, it was really about getting the business model canvas set up, going through and discussing that, setting up your market navigator, understanding market sizes and potential areas we would look at. And so we had actually, myself and the founders had meetings more frequently as a function of all the customer discovery interviews that we were executing. So it would ebb and flow is what I'd say is, you have that set cadence that you decide on with your team. But then depending on what needs to get done at the current time, things can be up or down.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. And you were doing the customer discovery, or were you all doing it?
So it was me leading, but I always pull in the founders because it's so important. They need to be in those meetings and hear that and getting that experience so that they can run them on their own. That way we could divide and conquer later. But initially, a lot of it was training them on how to go execute them and what we're looking for and why we're looking for it. So if you're working with another set of founders, you might have a different experience depending on their level their prior experiences.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it really depends on where you are in the process. When we were doing the customer discovery and completing the business model canvas, Dave was involved. We were in contact almost every day because I have a very interested founder, very curious founder. So he was very involved in the customer discovery part along the way, and then also we would communicate almost daily on the business on the pitch deck. Now that we're in the go-to-market strategy, we may talk once a week. So I think it really goes back to where you are in the process.
Great. Tim, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess similar. And I may have missed this. I apologize. Is it a fixed like 10-week program or is it open-ended? Apologize if I missed it.
I would love to tell you we have a disciplined timeline, but there's been some that have probably been in the 6 to 8 weeks that we plan, and there's been some relationships that have just gone past it. It really, I think it ebbs and flows with what the company really needs in the relationship and how it establishes itself. So it's we don't want to define it, and every company has sort of its own journey, and and when and we're always trying to be as creative as possible, trying to figure out how to extend it as much as we can, if you would.
I'll be more blunt than Mike on this one. If you're working with an entrepreneur who invented it in his garage, it's going to go pretty fast. If you're working with a professor who is teaching class during the week and doing things like that, it's going to be a little bit slower. So it's all, we were on a call with an entrepreneur, somebody who did it in the garage and his own businesses before. And we're like, it's, 3 to 4 month program. And they're like, yeah, no, it won't be. They're like, we got to get this thing done. So it all depends on who you get teamed up with, quite honestly.
Hello, everyone. I'm Terrence. I have a question with regards to whether you have had any interactions you prefer to avoid with your day job at Intel or any other company, or conflicts that you prefer to avoid, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, so on this one, every company has their own policies. So, heading into this, I'd encourage you to just open that conversation up. That way, you begin to remove the barriers that could potentially arise with regards to conflicts of interest. And so for me, it was pretty straightforward. I spoke with my department's lawyer, asking him, what are the procedures, and it was pretty straightforward for me. I just have to get approval through my boss, which she was very supportive of this. And then the other piece here is because we have a wide set of customers and there was some potential for, supplier overlap. There wasn't so much customer overlap because we have different products going to same markets, but way different products. There wasn't a conflict of interest for product, but on the supplier side, there could potentially be one. So our company has a process where I just need to file a potential conflict of interest. And that just brings awareness to everyone that says, hey, this is going on. Joel's involved with this activity, and it's just documented. But other than that, while it feels like, oh, why do I have to do this? There shouldn't be any issue. It was more of just to give everyone a heads up, and we're all on the same page.
Yeah, the EIR agreement does have an NDA in it. And there has been sometimes a little bit of conflict of working with the larger companies doing customer discovery and trying to get their NDA, and some of the professors, especially at the university level, they're licensing the technology. And so getting some of the universities to sort of buy off. So there's been a little bit of conflict on that, but not a lot on sort of the customer discovery part.
Thanks for sharing.
Hannah, did you have a question?
I do. So, they say startups aren't for the faint of heart. If you don't have a lot of startups, could you talk about maybe growing in your self-confidence and working with a startup team and how skills translate into that world?
I'll take that one, Hannah, if you want. It's been a really good exercise for me because number one, I don't necessarily just look at the product. And the conversations that Dave and I have been having are, if we're going to start a company, what do we really want that company to be? How do we want to direct the governance? How do we want, do we want to have sustainability initiatives? Do we want to have ESG initiatives? How do you really want to build a company that you have an opportunity potentially in which to build? So what I've looked at is how can I take some of the things that are my strengths, like sustainability, product manufacturing, marketing, all of those things, and really kind of apply them in a different way. And a perfect example of that is, for a couple of years, Hannah, I got out of doing what I really love, which is writing. So this opportunity has really given me a much better sense and being able to develop my writing skills as far as corporate communications is concerned, and also has allowed me to bring my sustainability background in to think about, okay, it's not just the product that you want to be sustainable, but how do you build a sustainable company that goes along with that product to make a sustainable brand? I read an interesting fact the other day that over 80% of corporate advertisers and their marketing groups are now gearing towards an ESG strategy or a UN Sustainable Development Goal strategy as far as their advertising is concerned. That's pretty significant. The majority of consumers, I think it's somewhere upwards of 75%, want their companies to stand for something, whether it's a social cause or, whether it's climate change or whatever. So, those things, those consumers are really kind of driving the bus. So to be able to get out in front of those, recognize those, and try and implement those into a corporate culture, in addition to a product offering, has really kind of brought everything full circle back around for me, Hannah.
And then Hannah, I'll just add that to what Dean said is, as we're really trying to go through a step-by-step process. I think listen to Joel and Dean. And so it's really about not getting overwhelmed by the big strategic. It's kind of like focused on what's next in the process. And in the pre-accelerator, we're also going to work on that, and also just kind of the mind frame of being an entrepreneur. And at the same time, we do bring in outside help, legal, marketing. Some of the budgets that we have for the entrepreneurs can be used for that, just to help them through that process. So I think there's a lot of coaching and guidance to help give people some confidence that, and focus, which I think is an important thing, so they don't get overwhelmed with the long-term view. Maybe I'll have one more question, Brett.
Oh, thank you. I was hoping to get a little bit more insight into how EEIRs and companies discover each other initially within the program. You said that the company interviews and makes the hiring decision. MEIA pays for the consulting work, but how does the company find the EEIRs that they want to interview, or vice versa?
I can start with myself. Yeah. I was cold contacted on LinkedIn. So Ben Margolis, who's a prior administrator or program coordinator, he reached out and basically said, we're looking for someone with process engineering experience in semiconductor and product management experience. And we really want to talk to you. So we basically spoke. We had a 30-minute conversation. He's like, I'd love to introduce you to Keith, the founder. I met with Keith. We had a conversation, and then we were off and running. And so that's my story. I'm sure there's probably 5 other versions of how folks get connected.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Dean and Joel have 2 different stories where Dean had a prior relationship, but ultimately we're trying to use every way possible to connect. And so whether we're out doing outreach specifically for a unique skill set, we're always posting our new entrepreneurs out on our website off our blogs for an EEIR announcement, or we'll just call you. You know, that's kind of how it's been. I'm definitely, as I run the summer program, well, I'll definitely contact some of you to see if there's interest, as you know, we'll probably have about 10 really early stage inventions for that to just get a taste. We have used EIRs in not often, but sometimes we've used EIRs twice, and especially those who are a bit more strategic in guidance from that perspective also. So I don't know if I answered your question, Brett, but that's kind of, you know, it's you know, our typical process is, you know, we'll bring on a company, we'll interview them, we'll ask for what kind of, you know, we'll try to assess and get an idea of really where they need support, and then put out an announcement. Sometimes when we, you know, when it's so unique, like, you know, finding someone who understands, you know, how to do a fab lab for batteries, that's kind of unique. You know, we'll do some recruitment, but hopefully otherwise we'll just try to, you know, kind of put the word out there and see what we can announce, you know, find. You know, obviously we have a database and you're all part of that because I think everybody signed up, and we'll go through that process first, and keep you updated. We also do invite you to some of our webinars and other events that we have, just to make sure that the relationship's always fresh. As everybody knows, being, you know, in someone's mind is always helpful, because it's